And good morning, everybody. This is Rama on writing with our Business of Writing and Publishing and Promoting webinar. It is a beautiful sunny day here in Arizona. We're getting ready to move into our final retreats of the year, and I know at least one of you will be attending our Sedona retreat remotely. We're glad to have you back, Ashira, and we'll see what comes out this time. And, today we're going to talk about something that I think we all struggle with. And the name of the webinar is Integrity in Marketing. And this name came out of last week's webinar. And I'm not sure if it really captures, where I want to go with this. I really think that to some degree I'm going back to a webinar that that I titled, and this was a few months ago, Walking in Our Author's Shoes. So it's a combination of those two components that we're going to deal with today. I think that most of us have never really been forced to market ourselves, and if we have, we've done it in a business career environment, and many of us have taken a deviation from that into wanting to be an author, publishing our books, writing our books, looking at, well, how can we either make a living this way, or how can we supplement our existing living by doing this? So the first step is to realize that being an author is a business, and most of us really don't want to accept that, because we really just want to write books or poetry or self-help manuals or something like that, and we all have the fantasy that we can build it and they will come. Well, I have news for you. That only happens in a mountain bike community. You can build it and they will come, and then the Forest Service gets involved and screws everything up. So, that was our approach, and it worked to whatever degree. Now, I'm not saying that in this process I made a fortune of money. I think if I had addressed it in a more business type environment, I could have made a heck of a lot more. But like the many of you online here today, that wasn't really my main focus. And I think that that's where our struggle lies here with being an author, is that we really don't want to be a marketer. And I've talked to many authors in our programs that have done their book, been very happy, done a little bit of promotion, and said, geez, I don't really want to be a promoter. And so sometimes we look for somebody we can hire to do our promotion for us, but unfortunately, that becomes very expensive, and there are no guarantees that it will actually do anything other than cause us to spend lots of money. So, we're caught between a rock and a hard place here. And so we have to step into the author promoter shoes, perhaps. Maybe that's the better title for what we have to do. And a lot of you out there are doing things. And just like Tom Carroll mentioned, he's doing a lot of stuff, but he doesn't really see the progress necessarily from it. And so you kind of have to operate on a faith-based system where you by doing things that expand your footprint in your promotion, that eventually you're going to reap some rewards. And it's hard to measure that. It's really hard to measure that. We started working with this gentleman who we had hoped would run the social media end of our business for our authors and for us. And whenever you deal with somebody like that, it's hard to nail them down into anything concrete, okay? They can say, well, I'll get you into Instagram and we'll do this in Instagram and that in LinkedIn and this in Facebook and that in Twitter, and all that is, it sounds really good, okay? But none of these people really want to commit to, okay, well, if we do this plan in LinkedIn, you will gain 10,000 new followers, okay? Because they can't say you're going to make X amount of money by doing that, and they're reluctant to talk in numbers of new followers even, okay? And in our case, we're not even concerned with the money component per se, okay? We're good at converting ourselves, okay? So if we were to generate 10,000 new followers, we could develop our own, program as to how to convert them to either retreat attendees or publishing contracts or something along those lines. Now, as an author, we're perhaps not as well groomed to do this, okay? We've spent our time writing the book. Some of you have spent a lot of time in your business life, converting clients and stuff, so you have a better handle perhaps on how to do that, but we still haven't created a, maybe it's called an analogy to, well, if I were to contact 5,000 new Twitter followers, what am I likely to create in sales? Or the next step being, what am I likely to attract to the platform that I'm developing behind the book or in front of the book that I'm writing, okay? So we kind of need to take a step back and say, well, what are our goals with marketing? And step forward into what we need to do. One of the approaches that has been very successful, and this really gets at integrity in marketing, and this one's on the line, and I thought I'd bring it up because of that, because we all have to kind of make our own decision as to what's integrity to us, okay? There was a gentleman, and I can't remember his name. If Tom was here, he'd rip the name off, no problem. But his strategy to become a best-selling author, and I think he hit the New York Times best-selling list through this strategy, was to purchase 20,000 copies of his own book. Then what he did was he offered that book for free to people with a shipping and handling fee. Okay, now his shipping and handling fee accounted for the shipping cost and the production cost of his book. So he didn't necessarily lose money on the game, and he did become a New York Times bestseller as a result of this. Many people criticized him for this strategy. And, rightfully so. I mean, it doesn't necessarily present itself in a way that sounds like, well, this is really sales. But the bottom line was that, he did get the books out to people, and ultimately that generated additional sales, because bear in mind that for every person that reads that book, they tell 5 or 6 people in a couple of weeks about the book that they're reading. And sometimes good, bad, or indifferent, that still inspires people to, well, I'll get that book. My buddy Joe here read it, and he got this out of that book. I'm going to read it myself. And so it can generate additional sales. So theoretically, those 20,000 books that he purchased and gave away could realistically lead to 100,000 additional sales. Okay, so this is a strategy that people use. And we need to come to grips with whether we can accept that as a method with integrity. Okay, and that one's one of those fine line details. But the bottom line is that most of us have a hard time with the marketing components. I was working with most of you got the email I sent out about Martha Dusage's book launch this week. Well, she was she is approaching becoming a #1 Amazon bestseller in her category. Well, initially, Denise had put her in some categories that didn't quite, fit well to her, even though her book is about the child within and things like that. It wasn't a kid's book per se, and the categories that she ended up in were kids' books, child within, and that was a much smaller category. And she did become a #1 in that category, but it didn't really radiate well enough with her. So they changed the categories to fit more with what she felt was integrity of where the book should be. So we all have to kind of deal with that. And another component that I struggled with her with, and this is real interesting because it goes back to the webinar we did last week on email marketing, was that she, in her book launch, she wanted to give away a workbook that basically had the same cover and was designed to allow people to kind of work along some of their releases for abuse type situations that her book was talking about. And in doing that, she initially set it up where it was a free download and there was no setup for the reader to give up an email address and contact information to get it. And to me, that seemed like basically a wrong thinking approach. Because if you're going to give something away for free, you deserve to be able to get something as simple as an email contact on your list as a result of that. And she struggled with that. Okay, because she said, well, I want to make it easy for people to get this book. And this, goes back to that real question of, a marketing approach that makes sense. What 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 is our own integrity in marketing? Okay, and so this was a real interesting dichotomy that I encountered, and I think that we did finally get her set up where she could collect the email addresses for the product. And for those of you who struggle with something like that, that is an accepted practice on the internet. And I did post one of those other kind of accepted practices to the Facebook page, Promote Your Book Now, this morning. It was a free book, okay, worth $19.95, and you paid $7.95 shipping and handling or something like that to get it, okay? And I just wanted people to see how this is done. We don't necessarily have to reinvent the wheel out there. We just need to kind of sort through what the big internet marketers are doing, the successful ones, and then we need to determine where we fit in, what we're willing to do for that. But I truly believe that most of us struggle with the concept of marketing because we feel that we're badgering somebody to either get on a mailing list or receive a newsletter or something, and so we're faced with this controversy inside of us, and we do need to step beyond that to some degree. We do all need to realize that marketing is a necessary, and if you want to call it a necessary evil to selling books, and you can call it a necessary evil, but it's really a necessary function. And we need to perhaps step away from the fact that we tend to be somewhat shy in this kind of step of our process. So it goes back again to, walking in our author shoes, filling out our author shoes, and accepting that there are components that we're going to need to apply in order to be successful. And of course, success is measured in lots of different ways. The easy approach is when somebody tells me that they laughed at my book, made them laugh. Well, to me, that means that I'm successful, because that was one of the things that I was after. Of course, it would be really a lot nicer if 20,000 people were laughing instead of 500 people. And so, I need to step up to the plate here and develop my marketing strategy. And again, that's what we're going to really be talking about in our next webinar, is taking these theoretical concepts into a more practical environment where we actually do move forward and take a look. I mean, you all have great ideas. I've spoken to a lot of you, and everybody has different ideas of how to move forward, and they're all good. Okay, they are all great ideas. And it goes back to, what it really goes back to is looking at ideas like Deb McTiernan had initially. Before her book was even published, she printed up these bookmarks and just handed them out right and left to everybody she met. And in doing that, she created a big buzz about her book. Now, I don't know what percentage of those people, kept those bookmarks or did anything with it. And for anyone that's been in sales, Tom and Bill, that it's all based on a numbers game, right? That, for every 100, there's like a 1% or 2% or a 3%, kind of return on those numbers. And, we need to accept that by doing certain marketing strategies. Maybe we'll add 10 or 20 or 30 or 10,000 new people to our lists. But what percentage of that, actually becomes a client? Okay, so we need to take a look again at how our conversion rate is, what our conversion rate is, and what we're trying to do with the conversion rate. I mean, are we just satisfied with collecting those likes? Are we satisfied with collecting those followers and then trusting the universe that at some point those followers will grow at an exponential rate and the conversion will come out of that? Of course, if we don't ask for the sale, then our conversion rate is going to be less than if we do ask for the sale. And so again, I think that's the component that most of us are timid about. And I'm right there with you. When I work with a new author and I'm telling somebody that hasn't gone to a retreat yet about the publishing program, it's gotten easier, but initially it was hard to ask for the sale. Well, I do a great presentation. I explain to them what that publishing program has. I can tell that they're interested, and now I need to ask for the sale or provide a step for them to lead to the sale. And I found that for myself, it's much easier for me to do this in person, because then I can actually pull out a contract and get them to sign it. And when I'm on the phone with them, I don't have that sort of a closing step. So again, one of the components that we all are struggling with is asking for that sale of that book. And many of us feel that asking for the sale is somehow, anti being an author, or we're just not comfortable doing that. So these are the components, these are the type of things that we all are struggling with in this game. And there are some established protocols that we almost have to maintained to some degree, which goes back to the example I like to use all the time, is that when somebody walked into my bike shop, I didn't immediately barrage them with what I could sell them. What I did was I became their friend first, and then approach, well, what can I do to help you, and what are you looking for, and those sorts of things. And so we will be developing in our own marketing approach those kinds of steps, and it is a trial and error kind of approach. Some of us are better than others because we've spent a lot of time selling in our life. Others, will kind of have to sort through what works and feels good, which goes back again to the integrity of marketing. And we as authors tend to be somewhat on the, well, some of us, myself included, tend to be somewhat on the shy side, and we would prefer to just sit and write our books and publish them and then hand them off to somebody else to market for us. One of the things that has shifted the industry to self-publishing is that even in the realm of the big name authors, the amount of promotion that the big publishers pretend to provide in their contracts has been somewhat minimal. And many of those big name authors are moving towards a self-publishing environment because they still have to do their own promotion. So why should they give up, so much of a percentage of sales? And, in our mind, we hear, oh, they get $1 million to write the book. Why should they even be concerned? Well, if the publishing company is making 20 million in sales, then and the author is still doing their own promotion, then maybe they're right in saying, well, heck, my name is so big that all I have to do is write that book, and the book will sell 1 million copies, and I'll be able to get 7 million or 15 million in sales, as opposed to the publishing house that only, they gave a sure thing to that author. So as I say, the environment has shifted to self-publishing as a viable alternative, even for big name authors. And one of the things that I do regularly is I look at how people market. I'm not I don't necessarily look at the content of what they're marketing. I look at the methodology that they're using, and I think about, well, how can I emulate that? And how can I explain that to the authors so that they can emulate this sort of stuff? Many of us are going to be developing a platform behind our book. A few of us have a platform already, and the book supports that, but I think the majority of our authors are writing a book to develop a platform in a business that they haven't done prior to the book. And so this is one of the best tools to utilize, is to take a look at what the big internet marketers are doing and go back to, well, heck, these are the steps that I need to do in order to fit into those sorts of programs. Many of you have heard me mention Michael Hyatt. I think Bill was the one that first introduced me to him. His book called Platform is a guidebook for explaining the components of building a platform. And it's all in one place. It's very helpful kind of book to give us the foundation of what we may need to put in place to develop that successful platform. And of course, in my thinking and working with you as authors, part of our platform revolves around writing more than one book. The biggest thing that I've read over and over and over again about the best thing you can do to promote your book is to write another book. And whether that book's in the same genre or not isn't the important thing. The important thing is to have it up and for sale, because if somebody likes what you've done, regardless of whether the next book is in the same genre, there's a good chance that they're going to take a gamble and read your other book. So, keep that in mind, that one of the components of being a successful marketer is to have more than one product. And as I say, some of you have some great ideas on all sorts of different products. And, it's worth pursuing. It's worth pursuing, having those kind of um, products available, whether they're, other books, other written products, other CDs, MP3 downloads on meditations, whether it's services, whether it's a coffee mug. That was one of the big things that we used to sell at Mountain Bike Heaven, was a logoed coffee mug. Um, we all can develop those sorts of components, and most of them don't cost a whole lot to do. And the perception of having that whole store of stuff to market is a big plus. We never did the shot glasses. I always thought that that would have been good, since bikers, like drinking coffee, beer, liquor. Stickers were always really, good for our business, which goes to another component here, that in our branding of ourselves, some of us have set up a publishing company name, whether it's a real entity or not. Sometimes it isn't, sometimes it is, and sometimes it's hard to tell. But many of us have developed a logo type component. Tom just spent $500 on a contest for a new logo for his business. Many of us are capable of creating something on our own as well. And those kind of things can be very good for recognition, whether you put it on a business card, a bookmark, a shot glass, on our website, on the cover of our book. All this kind of stuff goes back into that marketing component of what we're doing. And I think that those steps help us feel that we have more integrity or more credibility. I was talking to, I think it was Tom yesterday about the Amazon #1 program, and although we both realized that it didn't necessarily lead to a huge amount of sales of our book, it did provide a huge level of credibility for our business. And I think that those kind of steps, adding to our own credibility, gives us more of a ability to feel that we have integrity in marketing something that we got going. So anyway, that's kind of what I have to say. I know that you guys and gals out there have some good ideas on what challenges you face, and may have some questions as well. So if you do, you can unmute yourself, and let's open up this conversation a little bit. So anyone got anything good to say? Questions, answers?
I do.
Okay, go, Shira.
Hey, thanks. I don't have any questions. What I want to say is, before I ever heard of all of you over there and here in my room now, I studied marketing for music for several years. I took like 10 classes in that, and these webinars have been far more helpful to me than the years that I studied that other stuff, because that was like ended up being more theoretical. This is, some situation that you could possibly be in, but this is actually real. And I've done more in like a few months or even weeks with you than I ever did in the years studying that.
Well, thank you for that, and you have some good ideas. We've talked a little bit, and you've shared some of the things that you're experimenting with and have done, and potentially you've got some good components that can definitely create it. What it really does is it creates a brand recognition for who we are, and that is the key to marketing. I mean, look at how successful Nike was with their swoosh. So whenever you see that swoosh, what that refers to. And in your approach with your little cards, the only thing missing perhaps was your name on there and maybe a artistic logo that, when people saw that, they'd say, oh, that's Ashira's stuff. Okay, so you are on the right track in my mind, that you've got some great starting points for moving forward, and all we need now is to get that book done, and then and book 2 and book 3, because you're full of ideas and content. And that's the other point. I'm glad that you brought that up, and the word content came out of my mouth, because the one thing that we tend to disregard is that we are content providers. And I've said this over and over and over again on various webinars. We make the assumption that other people can do content development, but the reality is very few people can. And that's one of the biggest things that we can do for ourselves. And I tell you that hiring someone to do your content is an expensive component. As I take a step back and look at the proposal that social media guy talked about, one of the key components he was going to offer and obviously bill us for and charge us for was providing content. And both Tom and I banged it through his head that we're not really interested in that component. We can produce our own content. What we are looking for is someone to actually help us get it out to the universe. And so I want you all to really, it's like pat yourself on the back, give yourself a high five on the fact that the hardest part of marketing we can all produce on our own, which cuts the cost in half of what other people may have to pay to do what we ultimately can do. Okay. Now, of course, we do have to take a look at what are the steps of marketing that we have to belly up to the bar and actually do. And I think to some degree we're going to talk about that in our next webinar. But thanks, Ashira, for supporting what we do so highly, because that was what my goal was to share ideas and let the authors develop a community. If you weren't on last Saturday's webinar when we talked about blogging, one of the things that I did mention was that Catherine Carrigan was willing to post blog for blog for you, so that if you had a blog on your website, she would post your blog if you posted her blog. And that's part of the community that we really are in the process of growing. And I think that Ashira, substantiated that when she said that, these webinars help us. And a lot of that help comes from all of you, because you share your ideas and what you've done, and we all can learn from each other. So thanks for sharing that, Ashira. Anyone else got a comment?
Yes, I want to share something that helped me, and that's when I realized that things like the email marketing, where you ask people to sign up for your newsletter or opt in, they opt in because they're interested. I think there's a name for this type of marketing, and it's participation marketing or something. In other words, I felt like, well, I'm not getting in this person's face. They read something I had online, and they want to see the newsletter. In other words, they're very little just cold calling or advertising goes out. Most of it is people following on Facebook, looking at a Twitter tweet and retweeting it. They're they're starting to become interested in what I have to say. So I guess I'm not bothering them. Okay, so I finally got over that hump because they are interested. And the second thing is that I finally realized, as an author, I'm not in any different position than any other person starting a business. You have to wear a lot of hats, do a lot of different things you really maybe aren't that good at and don't like to do, but you have to start out doing them. And as soon as I can, and I'll say when book sales allow, I'm going to hire a publicist. I'll keep writing stuff that publishers use, but I don't enjoy the marketing. I'm giving up some of the profits so someone can do it. You know, that's fine. I mean, you should. Actually, it's a good business decision because someone else will market me better than I can, and I will end up being more successful if I recognize that.
You know, I'll go on, Bill.
I was going to say that's basically there's the idea in another business I was in. They called it one-to-one marketing. If you can establish a connection with one person, they're connected with other people that resonate with them. So basically what you're doing is you're just creating a relationship there, and those things will grow. And it's also in that book, The Tribe, that book. I can't remember. Seth Godin, I think it was. But yeah, that's what you're doing. Is it somebody that signs up for your newsletter? They'll do that because they're interested in what you have to say, because it resonates with them, but it also resonates with a bunch of their friends, and they all have friends that are all on the same wavelength, more or less. So that's just how it grows. It just takes time, I think. It's just planting seeds. Look at what you do every day is just planting seeds. And seeds don't grow overnight. They take a while, but boy, after they get going, then they drop other seeds and etc. It's like the pebble in the lake. It sends out waves in all directions, and I think that's what it's all about. So that's good. I think that's a good way to go. It just takes time. Like they say, an overnight success takes about 15 years.
Well, one of the things that I've heard Tom mention on a regular basis, that in the old school publishing environment, they recognized that it would take you 3 or 4 books before you would become a bestseller. Okay, so they were willing to invest. If they liked your idea, they would invest and know that they were going to lose money in the first 2 or 3 or 4 books, but eventually, if things panned out with their plan, it's 4 or 5, you would start to catch on, and that's when you would hit the big time. And of course, the sales of your other books would increase based on that as well. And I wanted to just say, Bill did mention Seth Godin. And one of the things that Seth Godin did is he gave out 1 million copies of one of his books. And I don't remember which book it was. It was an ebook, so it wasn't a print version book. And everyone said he was crazy to do that. Well, that 1 million books turned into 3 million print version sales that people did. So there are ways that we can give something away and generate sales as a result of that. And sometimes it's kind of sorting through what works. And that's why we go back to these big marketers, the Seth Godins, the Joe Vitalities, the Michael Hyatts. There's tons of these people, and I can't tell you how many mailing lists I'm on. And most of the time I don't look at the information, but they come up with a subject line that I say, wow, that's what is this about? And more than likely, I'll end up by posting that up on my Facebook page, and some of you get to share in what I've encountered through all this process. So it is a sharing process, which gives me this new pitch. If you encounter a decent article about something that could help others, send me the link to the article and let me take a look at it and post it up on that Facebook page. Or I think you can actually post it yourself. So one of the things that I've noticed, and I am not a good marketer. I'm not good at doing any components of this business. You all are better than I am. But what I've been doing over the last month or so is I've been pushing that Facebook page a little bit. I've been posting to it more often. I've been looking at, how many people read those articles. I've sent out in our to our news, our general list, say click the link, the check it out. And I have noticed I have gone from like 87 up to like 150 likes on the page. So I do appreciate anyone that's clicked my like. And, in the realm of internet marketing, adding 75 new people to, as likes is pretty insignificant. But to me, it feels like it's an accomplishment. So we can take small pats on the back for little things, which again, Tom Carroll, that goes to what I was saying is that we can achieve small things and and take some satisfaction out of it from it, and that we kind of have to set up some of those kind of guidelines. And as I say, that's what we're going to talk about a little bit more detail in about 8 minutes, so that we can develop some sort of plan for growing our business with some benchmarks that we can see as progress. Anyway, any other comments before I close this one down and move on to the next?
Let me jump in and ask, mildly off topic, but my Twitter account, I've got a half a dozen followers and those that I follow, but I never see tweets. Where do you guys see tweets?
I'm not sure if I can answer that because I haven't done that. Maybe Bill, have you had any experience with that? You got to unmute yourself first, Bill.
That would help, I guess. Anyhow, yeah, there should be a place that says tweets, that you can see tweets, and they have a really good tutorial. Twitter does. So if you go how to use Twitter on Google, and they'll, the twitter.com tutorial is excellent for teaching you the basics on how to do that. But they have all these different headings across there, just like a website does. Just go up there, get on your Twitter account, and just start looking at what all those things do, and just start playing around with it. That's the only way to learn this stuff. I haven't been able to learn it very well doing something else.
I get that, I understand. But let me just ask, where do you see tweets? Do they come through on your phone, or do you see the daily accumulation when you go back to your PC in the evening? Or
I see them on my PC. I can get them on my phone. I just haven't hooked that up yet, but I need to, because that's why I got a smartphone, a stupid smartphone. That's why I got a smartphone, so I could do that, but I don't. They come in so fast. It's just like,
See, that's what I gathered, was that everyone is getting them in a way that they see them immediately and respond almost immediately.
Yeah, smartphone.
But somehow I'm out of that loop. So I'll take your advice and I'll do some more reading. That's pretty obvious. I coulda, shoulda. I'll get after that.
Yeah, I mean, if I have an Apple phone, you can just get an app, a Twitter app or a Facebook app, and then that'll grab that, and you can activate it and just turn it loose on your phone, and then it'll just bring them in as they come in.
Thank you.
One of the things that I've noticed when you do download an app, most apps say something like, do you want to allow this app to
Control.
push, and I'm not sure what the exact terminology is, but it's when they say push, and if you click yes, what that means is that when your phone is in the locked window, those notifications still show up on it. Because I notice that I do get some Facebook stuff that shows up when I when I pull my phone out of the pocket and it's been locked, so that I don't start calling people, do the the butt calls. But I see that for Facebook. I see that for Bleacher Report, which is a sports website that I like checking out. So there are ways that the smartphone can integrate very easily, or the tablet, into these kind of processes. And I just wanted to, we'll talk again a little bit more in the next webinar, but Bill did hit the nail on the head that there are tutorials available that the Facebook, the Twitters, the LinkedIn, all these companies provide a lot of hands-on help to get you to use their systems. And rightfully so, because if you know how to use it, you'll use it, and they'll reap some benefit. They'll be able to run an advertiser to you because you'll fit into a certain parameter for them, and they'll make some money off of you using that site somehow or another.
I just pulled up the Twitter app download opportunity there on my smartphone. So, yeah, that's pretty obvious.
Okay, but if when you install it, there's a thing that comes up that you want to allow this app to push, click yes, and then you will see how that those tweets, whatever, come up, because it'll give them a little more access. You don't want to have everything pushed, because otherwise, the weather app and this app and that app and everything else will start pushing all these messages to you, and it can get a little bit cumbersome that way. Okay, gang, I do need to stop my recording and move into the next webinar. I hope to see you there. We're going to talk a little bit more about the big P word, planning. And I know most of you hate that word, so we'll move into that endeavor in our next webinar. It's been my pleasure speaking to you. Next week end is Halloween, so putting your zombie makeup on for the webinar is acceptable. Wearing those funny hats is always a plus. We still have to find you a jester hat, Ashira. I always keep looking, so if I find one, I'll mail it to you. Everyone, take care, have fun, enjoy this whole process, because we can take life real seriously, and all of us want to be authors, and we don't want to overwhelm ourselves. Okay, gang, it's been fun. I'll be back in a moment on a different channel.
Thanks, Rama.
Yeah, it was good. Once again, thanks.